Welcome to the UDL Mid-Course Web Conference. In this session, we will review where we are so far in the course, discuss the worksheet assignment, review the grading, online discussion, and course design. In addition, if you are enrolled in a Mass Focus Academy UDL course, we will review the Massachusetts Tiered System of Support, MTSS, and UDL. Finally, we will highlight what you can expect to come next in the course. First, we want to pause for a moment to reflect. It can also be interesting to reflect for some time on what it has been like to be back in the role of the student. What has that been like? What materials, resources, methods, and assessments help or do not help you in your learning? Have you learned anything new about yourself as a learner? Has this experience made you relate to your students in a new way? We'd also like to take this opportunity for you to reflect on UDL as a paradigm shift. Here are a few summary phrases that may be helpful as summarizing the key concepts of that paradigm shift. Let us know if you have others. Which resonate or do you find most relevant? Change the curriculum, not the student. Tight goals, flexible means. Essential for some, good for all. You recently completed the representation worksheet assignment. The goal of this assignment was to explore the UDL guidelines in depth by analyzing a lesson with the UDL representation checkpoints. The UDL guideline checkpoints include providing options for perception, providing options for language, mathematical expressions, and symbols, and providing options for comprehension. Remember that it is first important to define your learning goal for the lesson or for part of the lesson. Then you can be strategic about which UDL guidelines are most helpful to your students to achieve the goal and design those into your learning environment. You analyzed what was already in your lesson. Remember, many of these strategies you already do. UDL offers the framework for proactively planning and reflecting on your design choices. You do not need to have all of the UDL guidelines in your lesson. You just want to be able to reflect on why you did or did not have the option incorporated. You also want to be able to think about what possible barriers may have prevented students from achieving the learning goals. Keep in mind that there is not just one way to incorporate the UDL guidelines. Every lesson will look different, and every teacher will bring UDL to life in their classroom in unique ways. If you are unsure if your lesson has one of the UDL guidelines, you could work with a colleague in this course. Come up with your own strategies to help you define each UDL guideline. Work with your facilitator, or even ask your students for lesson design ideas. They are often helpful for thinking about new ways of doing tasks. Here are some resources you could use to find lesson plans if you prefer to analyze one of these lessons instead of one of your own. Remember, no one lesson will likely have every UDL guideline, and that's okay. The process of identifying a goal, then looking for options that support variability in representation, action and expression, and engagement are the core pieces of UDL. You can use any of these lessons for analysis throughout the course. Pause the video now if you want to take time to explore these resources more. In addition to the review of lessons using the UDL framework, this course includes weekly online discussions. Timely participation in the discussions is intended to maximize your learning and is a requirement of the course. We recommend that you post early. Check often to responses to your post and answer any of the questions that arise from your instructor or other students. Respond to other student posts. Your posts and responses to classmates are due by Monday at midnight each week. To facilitate the discussions so you are getting the most out of them, we have a few additional suggestions from discussions that have been very purposeful, helpful, and engaging. Ask questions and question topics you have read or viewed. Use the discussion threads as a tool to strengthen your understanding of the topics. For example, have an interesting and relevant subject line. Include questions that the readings and course activities provoked in you. Cite the materials. Tie the readings and activities to your practice. This is an important reminder about late submissions. They will not receive full credit. Of course, if there are extenuating circumstances that warrant late submission of work, you are expected to contact your instructor to develop a plan for submission or makeup. Acceptance of late work is at the discretion of the instructor. If you have any questions or concerns, as always, please contact your course facilitator. We want to be sure to proactively address any concerns you might have. Now looking ahead, we want to be sure you are aware of some important upcoming deliverables. Please see the course website for due dates for the following: a lesson analysis on multiple means of expression and action, a lesson analysis on multiple means of engagement, and a final worksheet assignment. As we did for the recognition networks, still to come is learning about the strategic networks, which align to UDL Principle 2, multiple means of action and expression. We will also learn about the affective networks, which align to UDL Principle 3, multiple means of engagement. As UDL is founded by research in the learning networks, remember that all three networks, recognition, strategic, and affective, are active in any learning event, and each student will vary in the way their brain is active. In fact, the same student will have different activation of the networks at different times. The UDL framework can be used to design sufficiently flexible and robust curriculum that addresses learner variability. We've begun to discuss how the UDL guidelines can be used to evaluate and design curriculum that addresses learner variability across neural networks, such as the affective, recognition, and strategic networks. We will continue to discuss how the UDL guidelines can be used to evaluate and design curriculum that supports the development of expert learners, such as accessibility, supports, challenges, and independent practice. For those of you taking this course from Massachusetts Focus Academy, here is a graphic for how UDL supports the Mass-tiered system of support. You'll notice that there are district standards and indicators, policies, practices, and procedures to implement across the district. Curriculum assessment, human resources, professional development, financial, student supports, including school, culture, family, and community, and leadership and governments are integral to the work. Then there is consideration for the academic and non-academic core components, including core curriculum, school-wide behavior, social rules, supports, expectations, screening, research-based interventions, and collaborative problem solving. Then there are flexible tiers for our students, which can vary from student to student and within a single student in different subjects or across different learning challenges. UDL is part of the high-quality core curriculum and instruction that is school-wide and supportive of all students. Within MTSS, UDL is most strongly represented in Tier 1 supports, though it is present throughout all three tiers of MTSS. UDL should be applied to instruction at Tier 1 to ensure that the greatest number of students have the supports and scaffolds they need from the start. Some students will need more targeted, personalized supports. UDL should be applied to supports provided at Tiers 2 and 3 to ensure that they are accessible and flexible, offering multiple pathways and choice. Furthermore, whenever appropriate, supports provided for Tier 2 and 3 should also be built into Tier 1 instruction to allow all students to benefit from their use. The learning environment should be responsive and flexible throughout all tiers. Remember, what's essential for some is good for all. From a UDL perspective, learning is about students becoming resourceful and knowledgeable, strategic and goal-directed, and purposeful and motivated. In those, there will be variability in what students bring as far as prior knowledge, how they activate their knowledge to identify, organize, prioritize, and assimilate new information, how they recognize the tools and resources that would help them find, structure, and remember new information, and how they will know how to transform new information into meaningful and usable knowledge. How are students able to formulate plans for learning, devise effective strategies, organize resources, monitor their progress, and recognize strengths and weaknesses, and abandon plans that are ineffective? How are students eager to learn? Are they goal-directed? Are they able to set challenging learning goals for themselves and then sustain effort and monitor their emotional reactions and distractions? Next in the course, we'll focus on the UDL guidelines, providing options for physical action. Included in that discussion, we'll be looking at the variability in the brain's strategic network. Given that variability, how can we add options into physical action, including the mode of physical response, options in the means of navigation, and options for accessing tools and assistive technologies? How can we provide options for expressive skills and fluency, including options in the media for communication, in the tools for composition and problem solving, and in the scaffolds for practice and performance? Finally, how can we provide options for executive functions through offering options that guide effective goal setting, that support planning and strategy development, that facilitate managing information and resources, and that enhance the capacity for monitoring progress? Here are some examples that may be used for options for physical action. We look forward to your added ideas for tools and resources that allow students flexibility in the mode of physical response, in the means of navigation, and for accessing tools and assistive technologies. What ideas already come to mind that you already use? What needs do your students have for options for physical action that might be useful? How do these different resources reduce barriers in the learning environment? You will also have the chance to explore and share tools and resources that provide options for expressive skills and fluency, so students can show what they know. Included are ideas for different media for communication, for options in the tools for composition and problem solving, and for options in the scaffolds for practice and performance. Again, we look forward to your insights into additional tools, resources, and strategies. Additionally, within the UDL Action and Expression Guideline, we will explore different options for executive function, including ideas for options that guide effective goal setting, that support planning and strategy development, that facilitate managing information and resources, and that enhance capacity for monitoring progress. Some of the resources may include technology options, however, some strategies may not. What is important is how the resources support your students towards the learning goal. There will never be one perfect tool for all students. Also coming next in the course is focus on the UDL engagement guidelines. Included in that discussion, we'll be looking at the variability in the brain's affective network. Given that variability, how can we add options to recruit interest, including how we make content relevant and authentic? How do we minimize threats and distractions? How can we provide options for persistence and motivation, including options that support goal setting, collaboration, resources and demands for a task, and to offer mastery-oriented feedback? Finally, how can we provide options for self-regulation by offering options that optimize motivation, support personal coping skills, and to develop self-assessment and reflection? We look forward to sharing ideas and hearing ideas from you. What ideas do you have that support the UDL engagement guideline? How do you provide options for recruiting interest? When you look at your lesson, UDL encourages you to think about where there can be some choice for content to be relevant and authentic to your students. How do you minimize threats and distractions and keep students on task? We will also share ideas for how we can provide options for persistence and motivation, including options that support goal setting, collaboration, resources and demands for a task, and how to offer mastery-oriented feedback, which is shown to make significant impact on student persistence. Finally, within the UDL engagement guideline, we will share ideas for how we can provide options for self-regulation by offering options that optimize motivation, support personal coping skills, and develop self-assessment and reflection. We look forward to what comes next. We will explore the strategic and affective networks through the application of UDL action and expression and engagement guidelines. For the final lesson analysis, you will put it all together in a lesson. You can experience how to design a UDL lesson from the goal through the UDL guideline application. Continue to have discussions with your colleagues so you feel a level of comfort using the UDL framework in any part of your lessons. We will have one final asynchronized summarizing video, much like this one, in the final week. Please contact your facilitator at any point should you have any questions or concerns. This concludes this session. Thank you.